This is Gary Johnson. Today is the 16th of June, and we're at the Chicago History Museum. And could you please give us your name?
I'm Newton Minow, and my wife is a very proud trustee of the Chicago History Museum.
And we're very proud to have her a trustee. Before we begin, could you recall other oral history interviews that you may have done so researchers might know other places to look for your record?
Fine. I've done a number of them. I did one interview for the Kennedy Library, another one for the Lyndon Johnson Library, another one for the American Jewish Committee, another one for a history of cable television, and I did one about Mayor Daley for the project at the University of Illinois Chicago campus.
Okay. Thank you very much. Why don't we turn directly to the life of the late Mayor Richard J. Daley. What would you say was his greatest achievement for the city of Chicago?
I think it was successfully leading Chicago in a very turbulent period of American history. When you look at the other big cities like Detroit or Cleveland or Baltimore or New York even, or parts of Los Angeles, Chicago came out better, and I think Mayor Daley had a great deal to do with that. I think his leadership and love of the city essentially made Chicago into a global city.
So what would you say his greatest strengths were?
I think his greatest strength was his love of this city. I think that the voters saw that. I think Mayor Daley would rather have been mayor of Chicago than president of the United States. He loved Chicago with a passion, and I think that that was probably what people most liked about him.
And what about any weaknesses of his?
He had, as everyone does, he had his share of weaknesses. He was not good in dealing with the press. He was not good in seeking outside advice. He had a very narrow set of advisors. He often didn't level as he should have on certain issues. So he had his share of weaknesses. I think he had a pretty hot temper as well.
Can you tell us about the first time that you met Mayor Daley?
I first met the mayor in 1952 when I was an assistant to the then governor of Illinois, Adlai Stevenson, and Richard J. Daley was not the mayor at that time. He was a member of Stevenson's cabinet, and I met him in that capacity in Springfield.
People often remember his experience in Springfield in the legislature, but not in the governor's office. What did Mayor Daley do?
I think he was, I know it had to do with state finance. I don't remember if he was director of revenue or what his title was, but Stevenson relied on him because he knew that Daley was a master of public finance.
Now, you knew the late Adlai Stevenson very, very well. Of course, you were law partners. Adlai Stevenson and Richard J. Daley seemed like very different personalities, yet they got along?
They got along, and in fact, I remember the day in 1955, 3 years after Stevenson left the governorship, when Richard J. Daley came over for lunch in the office, said he wanted to run for mayor and wanted Adlai's support. And Adlai gave it to him very promptly.
Now, what were your initial impressions of Mayor Daley when you met him?
Well, I thought he was a very shy fella. He was not what you normally think of as a politician, as being an extrovert and a very gregarious person. Richard J. Daley was quite the opposite, as I saw him.
Now, did that change over time from when he was a young man?
I think so, but not terribly. I think he remained, in many ways, even at the height of his being mayor, I think he was never totally at ease with the idea of shaking hands and being a great friend.
And you think that was the product of shyness?
I think it was shyness. I think in many ways, when he was with people like Stevenson, who were well educated, I think he felt a little inadequate, and and it translated into being shy.
Now, the late Mayor Daley, of course, was a very, very devoted family man.
Unbelievably so.
And that's the realm where he certainly was the most comfortable. And how did you see that?
I saw that many times, when particularly with his wife. One time we ran into the two of them when we were on vacation in California, and I could tell that this was not only a happy marriage, but a very devoted marriage. And I know he was a very, very fine father as well.
Now,
family came first with him.
One of the urban legends, if you will, about Mayor Daley and his family was that he would accept dinner invitations in the sense of he would make an appearance at dinner, but he would almost never stay for the actual serving of the rubber chicken because he always wanted to be with his family. Is that your memory?
I think that's correct, and he often went to church with his wife and children, and he wanted to be home, and I think he limited his obligations on Sunday because that's when he wanted to be with his family the most.
And they took vacations in Michigan together. Were you ever with the family on those family occasions?
No, the one thing I remember very clearly, one year, this is going way ahead now, this was 1967.
Right.
I was asked to be chairman of the National Democratic Congressional Campaign Dinner, a fundraising dinner. And they wanted to honor somebody. And they asked me who I would suggest, and I suggested Mayor Richard J. Daley. And he accepted. And when we got there, we had a place for him at the dais at the speaker's table with the President of the United States, Lyndon Johnson. And he was sitting out in the audience with a back table with his wife and children. So I went over to him and I said, Mayor, I said, you're being honored here. We'd like you to come up to the dais. He said, no, he said, I came here with my family. I'd like to sit here. And I thought that was a sort of an example of what he put first. Later, his son told me that after that dinner, President Johnson invited them all over to the White House, and they went there.
Now, which son told you that?
I'm trying to remember. It was Bill. Bill told me
that. What's your favorite anecdote, if you have one, about the late Mayor Daley?
I have two that really stick with me. One had to do with his political life, and one had to do with his being the mayor. The political life, when I came back to Chicago after serving in the Kennedy administration, he called me up one day and he said, I'd like to have lunch with you. Would you be my guest? I'm going to take you to the Empire Room of the Pomeroys. So the two of us went to lunch. We had a very pleasant, apparently he liked the Empire Room of the Pomeroys, which at that time was a very elegant place. And we talked a lot about the Kennedys, about life in Washington. And then at the very end of the conversation, he said, New Newt, are you ever interested in running for public office? I said, no, Mayor, I have zero interest in that. He said, isn't there any public office that you would like to have? And I said, not really. He said, are you sure there isn't any public office you would like to have? And I said, well, Mayor, as long as you're asking. I said, I'd like to be a delegate to the Democratic National Convention. At that time, the delegates were picked in the back room by the leaders of the party. And he said, oh, he said, everybody wants to be a delegate to the Democratic National Convention. You're asking something that's so hard. He said, are you sure you wouldn't like to run for governor or for senator? And I said, no, Mayor, I'd like to be a delegate to the Democratic National Convention. Well, that was more than a year before the convention. And when the time for the delegates to be chosen arrived, someone called me and they said, you've been picked as an alternate delegate. I said, how do you know that? He said, it's in the paper. And there was a little tiny item in the paper about who were the delegates. And of course, he didn't trust me to be a full delegate. He made me an alternate delegate, which I was. After that, the delegates, everything changed. You had to be elected.
Right.
So I became an elected delegate in subsequent years, but that was my experience. Then,
now, would that have been with regard to the 64 convention?
64.
Okay.
64 and 68.
And then 68.
Right.